Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Insight Series podcast on the Light Review with me, Chris Fordham. In this series, we take a look at how some of industry's top lighting designers approach a number of different arenas, giving you invaluable hints and tips from the best. So today's topic is places of worship, which in this country covers a number of affiliations. Joining us on this design ride is Mark Sutton Vane, founder of Sutton Vane Associates, which, by the way, is a consultancy ranked in the top 10 consultancies in the country. So welcome, Mark. Thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us. So when looking at lighting for places of worship, for those designers just starting out, or even those just looking for a new perspective, how do you approach these spaces, and what are your guiding principles? I've seen on your website you have quite a few that you've done at Sutton Vane Associates. So, yeah, how do you approach those?
The first thing is the people, because we are only providing light so people can see and do whatever they want to do. So we will spend time talking to the people who use the space, find out what they want, find out what the problems are, and that is the foundation of designing any lighting scheme. And then one has to check things like basic fundamental things like, have they got the money? Do they really have the desire to do everything they're thinking about? Because there might be implications in terms of what you can fix the building and that kind of thing. You also have to check that what they want is achievable. I've had clients who said things like, well, we want a beam of light that comes down through space and then expands halfway down.
Awesome.
Oh, I wish I could have done that for them. It would have been wonderful, but unfortunately we all live by the laws of physics, and light goes in straight lines. But so it's the people is the most important thing, because they're the ones who have the needs, and they're the ones who one has to try and satisfy their needs with lighting. So the lighting then follows that, and the lighting is designed to achieve whatever they need, and that can be a huge range of different things. There's always a few basic fundamentals which any scheme should, as a matter of course, satisfy. It should be possible to see your way around safely. It should be possible to read writing where you need to, and it should be possible, or music where you need to, and it should be possible to see, as appropriate, the architectural treasures of the building as needed and when needed. Then the next layer that's added on top of that is adding a bit of atmosphere and adding the kind of lighting that tells the story of the activities that are there. I mean, the altar is usually the most important object in any church building. So that should be lit, and its surroundings should be lit. So when people will come into the space, the first thing they see is the altar, because that's really what it's all about. And then maybe there are other bits of architecture or other activities that could be lit as well. And many places of worship are moving towards more flexible kinds of use. They have many more activities than they used to. So quite often, a church building is expected to be a community centre as well. Maybe it'll have art exhibitions, maybe it'll have performances, celebrations, graduation ceremonies, all kinds of things can happen in a place of worship. So flexible lighting is really important and really helpful.
So basically, the spaces are reflecting our general workplace, and it made me I laughed when you said about the beam of light, because if there was one place where you would expect the laws of physics to be changed, it would be in a church, a miracle lighting, as it were, that would be the one place, right? You'd be okay. I'll just bend that light for you just that once, which is that made me laugh. But what you said actually about when I mean, I have had a small experience of lighting churches, and I seem to recall that the different denominations, when you were saying about funding, and that's obviously critical. The different denominations have different funding. So I didn't understand, but I think the Catholic Church has more money than the Church of England, for example. I don't know if you've come across that or.
Not that particularly, but certainly come across a huge range of budgets from some places for whom every penny has to be scraped together to other places who have got a quite reasonable budget. One interesting thing is that because lighting is something that can be seen, unlike, say, improving the drainage, which might be equally important to a church, sometimes people will kind of like reach for their checkbook if it is something that's going to be a visible and big improvement. And quite often, lighting schemes can be quite slow to develop. And early on in the scheme, we can organize a demonstration of samples of lighting to show how good it can be. And that can be really useful for fundraising for the whole scheme when it comes along a bit later.
Actually, that was a question that I had later on, which basically just finding a consensus from the users and the client I found as a mission in itself. So it's quite a challenge, I think. I know that everything is by committee in the churches that I've seen, and committees are notoriously difficult for finding a quick answer to your question. So how do you deal with that aspect? Because it's all part of the design, isn't it, in a way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, working with the people is very important, as it is in any lighting scheme, because at the end of the day, you've got to give them a scheme that they're happy with. A very good start is to end up with a written brief, which may be written by the lighting designer, or maybe written by the church, or maybe a combination, and to kind of record any decisions taken in a committee. You know, if they say they want it kind of bright here but dim there, that's fine. But then let's just make a note of that, because one of the biggest problems is that the people on the committee can sometimes change because they can't all go to all the meetings, and so different people have got different ideas, and that can be one of the greatest challenges to keep the design on a straight path, and to make sure that it's not being changed the whole time.
Places of worship are so personal, I think, to people. They mean something to their lives. So I guess that it makes a big difference, doesn't it, when you're trying to talk to them about for some people it's their lives, isn't it?
Oh yeah. And the other thing is that one's dealing with a different kind of person. I mean, if we're lighting, a new hotel, then all the people who you're dealing with are professional designers who know the kind of basic rule of first you design it, and then you agree it, and then you build it. Whereas the people in church committees are quite often have had no experience of that kind of discipline of how you build things, and don't understand that you've got to kind of make a decision and that you can't then change it. Because so an awful lot of kind of work has to go into kind of explaining to them and leading them, and explaining the process to them. But that's what any good designer should do anyway. You should be helping your client along, depending on how much or how little they know and how much leading they need.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we're peacekeepers, lighting designers. We've got lots of different hats, haven't we? Because when I studied product design at Brunel University, and it was a blend of, it was supposed to follow the Bauhaus for something. So you should blend engineering with art. And sometimes that's why lighting is a very good fit for many product designers, because those two elements are very prominent. But you also have to add the fact you have to be a people person, because you are discussing these projects and you're taking them on a journey. It's you have to tell a story, don't you, in a way. So I think we probably underrate ourselves because lighting designers, to be lighting designer, you can't just be a lighting designer. You have to be a number of different things, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it changes too. I mean, at the beginning of the project, you're talking about kind of feelings and emotions and what the light can do in terms of getting over the story of the church and its mission and how you can help all the activities that go there. But then later on in the project, when you're dealing with contractors, it's all about numbers and precision and hey, was that the right driver that you installed? Were you cutting a corner on those drivers that we specified? And so you've got to be much tougher from that point of view. And all the kind of nice soft stuff is parked to one side later on in the project. And then finally, when everything's installed wonderfully, and you've got really good quality drivers installed, of course, and all that, and the lighting is looking really great, then you need to spend time going back to the client and doing the touchy-feely stuff, programming it all in to make sure that it is all actually delivering those emotions and the practical side of it, the right light levels and that kind of stuff that the client wants and that the client has paid their good money for as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, because that's where lighting design really comes into its own, doesn't it? Because you're on a journey, and whereas if you're not a lighting designer, you're going to stop when you've sold the product. It's the intricacies of the delivery that are really important, and I think it's what we take pride in, isn't it, as a community, I'd hope. So actually on that point, how often do you refer to lighting guides? For example, LG13, you mentioned there about having enough light for certain things to be carried out. I mean, LG13 is obviously just a guide, but do you ever use that? And does the space, the architecture, drive the design, or is it the religion itself? How much can a religion actually drive the scene? Do they each have their own palette, so to speak?
I think different religions have different requirements. They will have different items that they want to be lit, or different activities that are important. And so that's very much part of the brief from the client, that you must take on board whatever activities or requirements they want. Yes, the guides are very useful. There's always that point that it's good to at least know what the guide says, and I usually follow the recommendations of a guide, simply for that practical reason that actually, if ever in the future someone would say, "Oh, I've tripped over that step because it was too dark and I'm still in the church," then if the church can say, well, the lighting scheme was designed to the Society of Light and Lighting, yes, whatever it was, then that is a very good defense for the church.
Massive safety net, isn't it?
Exactly. And that is probably the biggest reason that I find them very useful indeed. I mean, I think they're excellent publications, and I worked on. I mean, I rewrote the Arts, Galleries and Museums Lighting Guide for the Society of Light and Lighting recently. So they're great, and it's always good to keep an eye on what they say. Yes.
I don't think there's any better advertisement for someone who's trying to light a gallery, or just to say, by the way, I just wrote that guide. That's if you could just ask me, just ask me instead of look at the guide, because I wrote it. Yeah, that's actually Mike Simpson said that to me once. It was quite funny. So in respect to the palette that the different churches use, because I'm quite interested as to, I don't know, when you go into, if you've been to Milan, the Duomo in Milan, and when you enter that space, it just makes you, I'm an atheist, but I went in there and I thought, oh, I can feel the presence of something, but it's just the way that it's lit and the way that so it just makes you feel small. So that's probably the Catholic Church. I don't know if other churches, and the lighting obviously has a massive part to play in that, because you can create such a different ambience. How do they differ in their approach, the aesthetic that you try to create? Or don't they?
Yeah. I think the architecture is a huge driver in what you do. I mean, there's a number of different kinds of lighting. There's first of all, the functional lighting, to give the right lux in the pews or in the choir stalls or whatever, so that the right activity can happen, and to make sure that the area around the altar is properly lit, so the celebrant can be seen properly and the celebrant can see what him or her is doing as well, because that's very important. But then, having achieved those things, there's then the surrounding envelope. And the surrounding envelope may be more or less important, depending on its quality and its importance to whatever's happening. So that's very much part of the design, as to how much you light the surrounding envelope and how much you make it stand out. Because, as you said, the Duomo in Milan, you were looking at that surrounding architecture, and that was very important. And so the lighting designer can choose, in terms of a hierarchy, what should stand out when you go in there. For example, when we lit York Minster, people arrive at the West End, and that's when they make and they look in, and that's when they make the decision: are they going to go in and visit the whole of this huge and wonderful building or not? So the lighting there is designed to show off the architecture, and you cannot see a single modern light fitting when you go and stand there. They are all completely hidden, because that was terribly important, so that people could stand there and go, whoa, what an amazing place. And hopefully they all say, yes, we're all going to go in, please. And then from then on, of course, there's then the kind of hierarchy that I've been saying about, practical lighting, on the seating and so on. Yeah. No,
that's really interesting. And also, these churches, they've changed their purpose has changed over the years, hasn't it? In a way, because they're part of our cities and our towns and our makeup, but maybe they're more of historical interest now than in the past. I mean, like you said, actually, about how you'd like the church depends on the architecture. So when you said that, I thought, so these new types of build, it must be interesting to see. I guess there's still the elements, they're still the same. You're still highlighting similar elements, but because the look and feel is a lot more modern, it must take on a different approach for something. I'm thinking of 50s churches, 1950s churches, 70s, because it's a little bit more, I suppose, less decorative, would you say, or a little bit more austere? I'm not sure.
Yes, you're right. They don't have the kind of like acres of fancy Victorian decoration, for example,
which I love.
Well, me too. But they quite often do have works of art, which are important to them, and so those can be highlit as appropriate. They quite often have wonderful stained glass windows. I mean, we recently lit a church that's only been built from scratch about 3 years ago in Battersea, and it's got the most wonderful stained glass windows, all very modern, all done by fantastic digital techniques, but they look absolutely great. And we lit them so that they all glow at night and make the church into a real beacon of warmth, and make the church look so attractive by night. There's a lovely warm light comes out of those windows at night.
Oh, so is that visible from the outside, or is...
Yes, the lighting was specifically to make the stained glass windows look good at night.
Nice.
And the church is on a main road, and so it's a real kind of, hey, look at us kind of a lighting. And it works. It's a real attractor. It also has the additional benefit that actually, because there's lights on in the church, people with bad intent, vandals or whatever, are rather put off the idea because they think there might be people inside the church.
Yeah, it always sounded and surprised me how low people would go to a church and steal the things inside. I mean, it's quite common, isn't it? Especially in these old churches in villages and such like, which in the past would just leave their doors open. You'd get
Yeah.
some untoward person would just go in and help himself too, which is so low, isn't it? Anyway, I think we should wrap it up there. It's been great talking to you. My problem is that I could just carry on forever, but unfortunately, there's a time limit. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. Be sure to share and like. Thanks to you, Mark. It's been great talking to you, and everyone will see you all soon.